Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Data Playbook. This is week 8, and I'm going to go through every single matchup. I'm also going to go through these in the short form like I've done before, so it'll be up to you to pause and look at any relevant information that's important to you. I will try to highlight a few pieces, but I'm just going to run through them pretty quickly. Getting into the next matchup with Cleveland at New England, where New England is favored on the money line with a spread of 7 points and a total line of 40.5. Some of the notable points are that Cleveland allows very few rushing and very few passing. They're pretty good at stopping their opponents overall, but they have absolutely terrible offense, being one of the worst in the leagues at scoring for themselves, one of the worst in the leagues at passing, and one of the worst in the leagues for rushing. Surprisingly, they do like to utilize their tight ends, one of the best in the leagues for utilizing their tight end. For the Patriots, you have a scoring rank of 8 and an allowed scoring rank of 5, so they're pretty good at scoring and pretty good at stopping their opponents from scoring. They are pretty bad at stopping the pass, but really good at stopping the rush. And they're pretty good at passing themselves, while not great at rushing themselves. And that reflects about evenly for the tight ends as it does for wide receivers. I'll quickly flip over to our averages. I think the other interesting thing to note here is that Cleveland is one of the worst in the league for any sort of fantasy production. So maybe stay away from them if you have any fantasy players you're looking for. For your quarterbacks here, you have Dylan Gabriel and Drake May, with Gabriel having 35.5 total fantasy points, averaging 7.1 per game, and Drake May has 147 fantasy points, averaging 21 per game. Drake May has a total of 3 turnovers this season, with 2 passing interceptions and 1 loss to a fumble, and meanwhile Dylan Gabriel has no turnovers this season. Once again, moving over to your averages, and then just looking into how much the quarterbacks affect the carry game, you have very little from Dylan Gabriel, but over here with Drake May, you get almost 23% of the carries. Your starting running backs in this game are Judkins and Stevenson, with Judkins having 91.9 total fantasy points this season, averaging 15.3, and Stevenson having 68.9 total points, averaging 9.8. There are no turnovers from Judkins, and Stevenson's lost everything that he's ever given up, which are 2 rushing fumbles and 1 receiving fumble. Here's your averages if you need them. And then looking down here for our carries, you have Judkins getting the most work with 65.6% of his team's carries. And a much more spread out story over here, with Henderson getting some carries, Stevenson getting 36.13 total carries. Your number 1 listed receivers are Jerry Jeudy and Stephon Diggs, with Jeudy having 47.7 total fantasy points, averaging 6.8 per game, and Diggs having 84.6 total fantasy points, averaging 12.1 per game. With no turnovers, and switching over to the averages, this is your breakdown week by week, as well as their team totals for receiving yards, with Jerry Jeudy having 18.8% of the team's total receiving yard share on the Browns, and Stephon Diggs getting almost 26% of the team's total receiving share. The number 2 receivers for this game are Isaiah Bond and Kayshawn, where Isaiah gets 24.2 total fantasy points this season, averaging 4 per game, and Kayshawn has 79.6 total fantasy points this season, averaging 11.3 per game. Between the two, there are no turnovers, and if I move over to the averages, if you need them, as well as the weekly breakdown, looking at their share from the team, you get Isaiah Bond with about 9% of the team's receiving share, and over here with Kayshawn, you get about 20.3 of the team's receiving share. Finally, going through the tight ends, you have David Njoku and Hunter Henry, with David having 51.3 total fantasy points, averaging 8.5 per game. Hunter Henry having 73 total fantasy points, averaging 10.5 per game. There are no other turnovers with your averages and your breakdowns here. And just looking at their receiving share, you have Njoku with 16.4% of the team's receiving share, and Hunter Henry over here with 17.6% of the team's total receiving yard share. So the numbers indicate that the Pats would completely be able to shut down the rushing game from Cleveland. We'll just have to see how the passing game does against this pretty good passing defensive team. But if it comes down to scoring points, the Pats should take this away. So there you have the details for this matchup. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did and you got something out of it, leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what else you might want to see in the future. Other than that, thank you so much for watching.